Now all of this is for a recipe so old that you may not have come across it. But if you understand it, it's very simple, you can do homemade pottery. Not with clay, but with baker's clay. Don't be fooled, it's not Play-Doh. It's much more versatile. It has those three ingredients though. It has flour, water and salt. And in these proportions, 4 cups of flour, 1 cup of salt and 1.5 cups of hot water. That's all you need to remember. And you mix them like this. Get a bowl and put in the 1.5 cups of hot water. Like that. And into that you add the 1 cup of salt. And when that starts to dissolve, which you will do almost immediately in the hot water, you add your 4 cups of flour. And don't have to use cups, you can use smaller quantities, but just remember 4 of flour, 1 of salt and 1.5 of hot water, and you can hardly go wrong. Well, bang it in there, make sure it all gets in, and then stir it up with a spoon. That'll take a while, but once it's all gone interesting and gluggy, and the water's all mixed into that, then you need to get your hands to work and squeeze it around as if it were really clay. Well, I'm going to put that to one side because I've mixed them up already, and this is how it will come out in one of 3 ways. It could come out like that. Looks okay, but as you work with it, it's very droopy, it won't hold its shape, and it sticks to your fingers rather than sticking to itself. So that's too wet, add a bit more flour. If it comes out like this, it's not going to stick to your fingers, but it's not going to be much good for anything else. As you work it, you can see it's cracking. You won't be able to make anything decent out of that, it's too dry. Add a bit more water, not very much, just wet your hands, work it around and it'll probably be okay. If it is okay, it'll come out like that. Beautiful stuff. You can make an imprint and it holds it. You can make a shape without it drooping, it doesn't crack and it doesn't stick to your fingers. And keep working that around and you can do, well, anything with that you can do with clay. You can pinch it into little shapes. You can flatten it out and texture it. And probably if you're beginning, the best way to do it is to sprinkle a board with a bit of flour, dust that over, plonk your stuff in the middle of it, roll it out to about 1 centimetre thick, a good sheet of it. That's the good way to begin, and then you can work on that, either texturing it or cutting it into shapes or pinching it up, doing whatever you like. But when you've finished, you have to do baking, not in a kiln the way you do with ordinary clay, but in an ordinary oven in the kitchen. Take an ordinary baking tray. If it's not got some sort of Teflon coat, shove a bit of alfoil into it, aluminium foil like that, and put your little creatures in like this. Now you'll probably need adult help here because ovens are measured in 2 different temperature scales. If you've got a new one in Celsius, you use about 150. If you've got an old one in Fahrenheit, you use about 300. So get some help and remember the 2 temperatures, about 150 or 300, and cook it for about 2 hours. And after 2 hours, this is what you should get. They should come out like this, rather biscuit-like, and you'll know if they're done because if you clank them together, they should give a muffled tong or ting. Well, at least a hard click. If they thud, put them back for a bit longer. If they've blown up and burst, they were too hot. Try again with the oven not as warm as that. You can get some interesting effects without much trouble. That one that looks a bit like leather or wood, and its mate over here, the lion cub, had that effect simply by being painted with milk once they'd set in the oven. I took them out, painted them with milk a couple of times, put them back. And it gives you that lovely finish. You notice there is the paper clip that I pushed in so we could hang that up as a decoration. Well, you can do that, or you can paint them. There's a decoration which has been painted with ordinary paints. There's a decorated pig. And there is my little pinched possum as a statuette. That's a new use for a very old recipe.